Thank you for joining us. We are going to be doing Excel for beginners. And really quickly before we begin, I will be sharing my screen showing this process on Excel in front of you so that you can kind of follow along. But I do also encourage you, if you are able to open Excel on your own computer and try to kind of work through it as well. We will be creating a very simple table. I say very simple. We're going to keep this as simple as possible just so that everybody can stay up with us. But if you do join us in 2 weeks, we do have calculations and formulas within Excel. That template that we create today, we are going to be building off of next week. So I do encourage you, if you can, to join in. If not, we can send you this template following the webinar along with the recording if need be. So without further ado, I am going to quickly share my screen. One other housekeeping item, I am in rural Ontario, so I am going to be turning my camera off just so that I don't get glitchy by any means. So just so everybody knows. Okay, so like I said, this is Excel for beginners. So today our objectives, we really want to learn the basics of Excel. We want to know how to create a workbook and a worksheet. We want to become a better functional user. So you're going to kind of learn a little bit of tips and tricks, how to format some cells, how to create a very simple payroll chart. Now, you don't necessarily have to always use payroll, for example. I just used payroll for today's purpose, but a very simple chart showing simple information. And we really want you to understand the usefulness of Excel and how you can apply it across the board to your day-to-day activities within the nation or your organization. So, overview of what we're going to learn today. We're going to create and save workbooks, and we're going to look at the layout and the structure of Excel. So we're going to look at the ribbons and the groups on the top. We're going to enter information into cells, and we're going to create a small little table. We are going to work with 2 basic formulas, and like I said, very basic, mostly multiplication. And we're going to format some cells. So we're going to format number cells, we're going to format text cells, and we're going to create a small little chart. So where to begin on my screen? Like I had mentioned, I do encourage you to open Excel in the background. And when you do open Excel, you're going to see it's going to look like this. So if you should have a home screen, a new, and an open tab along the side. Now, it depends on what version of Excel you have. However, that being said, they all look very similar. So you can choose a blank workbook, or you can go down and you can get an overview of templates that are already created for you. So if you don't want to do the legwork in creating something from scratch, you can pick something here. Or you can search it for online templates, and it will give you a template to guide whatever information you are looking for to create. So there is a variety of things, and this is very, very useful. But for this webinar, we are going to just click here, and we are going to create a blank workbook. So before I move into stopping my screen and opening up Excel, we just want to look very, very quickly at the structure of Excel. So when you open Excel into a new blank workbook, this is what it's going to look like in front of you. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just open my Excel right now. So that makes it easier. Okay, so it should be a blank workbook there in front of you. So in the structure of Excel, there are many, many features of a workbook. The first feature is sheets. So down here on the bottom, this sheet 1 is a one worksheet. Within a workbook, you can have multiple worksheets. So by clicking this cross tab here on the bottom, it actually creates multiple sheets within your workbook. So that's always good to know, because you can have multiple tabs of information here on the bottom, all housed in one workbook. When you open a new workbook, you will always begin with just simply one sheet on the bottom. And these sheets themselves, they are made up of columns. So columns are up and down, and they're here located on the top. They're alphabetically A, B, C, D, and they go on and on and on and on and on. And then they're also created with rows. So rows are the number sequence and they move down on the page here. And again, they are in a numerical sequence. The intersect of a column and a row is called a cell. And you will predominantly be putting information into cells when you're using Excel. So each cell has its own unique scribe, and it actually has hundreds and hundreds of features in each cell, depending on obviously the information that you're using within your worksheet. We will see later on more features within each cell. So each workbook can actually contain 17 billion cells. So nobody's ever going to be using 17 billion cells, let's be honest here, but you can have quite a bit of data within each cell in a workbook, depending on the magnitude of the work that you're looking to produce. And another thing that we will use today specifically is ranges. So if you drag, or you can drag among columns, and if you simply doing that, you click on the first cell holding your mouse, and you can drag down and you can drag across and you can pick cells. This is considered a range. And really the way that you want to look at this, ranges are indicated using a through component, and through basically in this case, this is A1 through to cell G15. Okay, so this is really important because as you become more familiar with Excel and information contained in your workbooks and your worksheets, you may be looking at ranges of information, and it's really good to know what range of cells that you're working with. Okay, so the next really important feature in Excel is Excel's layout. And the layout predominantly can be found across the very top of Excel. So we always, when we open Excel, we'll begin on a home tab. So your home tab is here, and it shows, in this ribbon, shows different groups, those groups being the clipboard, font, alignment, number, etc. But when we choose different tabs, the tools on them change. So if you were to go to the Insert tab, the information in the ribbon would change. Same thing if you used page layout, formulas, etc. So they all house unique information, and they all have a tool in themselves. So each ribbon, like I had said, is divided up into groups. And many of the features in these groups are actually not all shown. So if you see here, I don't know if I can make my screen any bigger here, but if you see here on the clipboard, there is a little down arrow here. If you click this down arrow, you can see other features. Same within the font. There's more, there's more features here within the font. So not all of the features in each of the groups along the ribbons are shown. I encourage you to click and kind of try to familiarize yourself, because there are a lot of features that fall in each of these groups in these little drop down arrows that are very useful tools as we move forward today. Another thing to note here, gonna hide my people, is the scroll bars. So there's two different scroll bars. There's a scroll bar here down on the side, which allows you to move up and down with your mouse or with the toggle on your mouse. Same thing with the scroll bar here on the bottom, moves right and left. And should you need to, there's a zoom bar here on the bottom. I'm trying to highlight it here with my mouse. So you can make these cells bigger so that they're easier to see, or smaller. I will make them bigger actually today, just for today's purpose. And then the other thing, there are also view options here on the bottom. So we're in a normal function right now, just shows very clear chart, but you can look at it in different functions. So if you have multiple pages, or in this very small version. But for today, we are going to be working through normal view. Up top here is the name box. So this name box here, if I click on cell A1, here it shows the name of the cell A1. And this is really important. So if you're working through cells and through information, you always want to make sure that you're typing in the information in the formula bar in the proper cell. So you can always find the name of the cell here in the top corner. And like I said, A1 or A6 or D5, always found up top here in the corner. And up top in the formula bar, so if you want to, this is considered your formula bar here. And as we move through and create formulas, you will see when you click on the cell in the formula bar, we'll have the formula of the information that we're working with always shown here. So that may look like a simple calculation using numbers. It may look like a calculation using cells, and it will take the information contained in each cell to import it into the formula bar to create the formula. And again, as we move through these three series, you'll understand more about formulas and calculations because Excel works exactly like a calculator would. And as always, very, very quick pointer. Always you want to make sure that you're saving your information. So saving or saving as, I do encourage you today to save your work if you are going to be joining us over this series so that you can continue to work because we will be building off of this simple chart as we work into formulas and calculations and then creating charts and pivot tables. And that I believe is in 3 or 4 weeks from now. So today we're going to be creating a very, very simple payroll spreadsheet. And this payroll spreadsheet has very simple information. It's going to have an employee ID, an employee name. We're going to be looking at very simple wage rates and hours worked over the course of a month or over a 4-week period. So very simple information. And as we move through, we are actually, like I said, I encourage you to actually import this information here. So I'm going to be doing the same thing, and I am happy to share this with you after the webinar if you don't want to work through Excel today. So we are going to move into Excel A1. And I want you to put the number 1 into Excel. And then I want you to hit enter. A really important component is data is actually not set into a cell until you hit enter and you move out of that cell. So if you go back into cell A1, and I will just delete and go A1. And let's say I didn't hit enter and then I wanted to, continue on and do cell 2 and cell 3. Well, that's all of that information is still housed in cell A1, which is not what we want. We want simply whatever the first number you're working with, and in this case, that is number 1, we want to make sure we hit enter, which will move down in the column to the next cell A2 so that we can put our additional information 2, 3, 4, etc. So I want you to add those 4 things here just really quickly. If we were working with, let's say, a payroll table of 70, 80, 100 employees, because many nations have that many staff, to simply type in numbers 1 through 100 or 1 through 50 would be not only repetitive, but kind of cumbersome. Well, there is an autofill option in Excel. So what I would like you to do is you can actually click on this number 4. Let's say we've put 4 numbers in. And if you click and highlight the cell, make sure you're using cell A4. If you scroll to the bottom corner of the cell with your mouse, it will actually change. So it looks like a big white cross. If you hover over the bottom corner, it will turn into a small dark cross. If you click and hold that mouse and drag down, today we're just going to drag down to 10, it's going to want to fill in the same number of that cell. We don't want to fill 4 because we want to create a continuous sequence. If we click here to the autofill options and click on it, we have options. So right now, Excel thinks we want to copy the series. So it thinks we want to put 4 in the series of cells that we're working with. We don't want that. We actually want to fill the series with numbers. So if we click fill series, it's going to change what it thought we wanted to do by adding 4s and just copying the formatting in the cells to filling the series up till 10. So this is a really, really good tool to use because it actually saves you time. And you can go right from the top toggle and you can, let's say we don't have this information here anymore. We went back, we did 1, we did 2, we did 3, for example. If you went back to cell A1 and again, hovered over the bottom corner used your cross and dragged, it's wanting to do the same thing for me. It's wanting to fill the series. Same thing. If you click on the toggle, fill the series, it will fill with the information that you want. I hope everybody so far is okay. We're going to be moving into cell B1. And in here, we're going to be picking names of employees. So for this exercise, pick any 10 names that you want. And I'd like you right now, take, 30 seconds and fill in names in column B. So again, when you put the information in cell B1, make sure you hit enter as you continue to work through the cells. And again, just pick 10 random names. They can just even be letters. It doesn't matter with the information that we're utilizing here. We just want for presentation purposes. And I picked my team, and now I'm going to use my family's names. There we go. So now here we have 10. Now, let's say you spelt a name wrong. So in this case, I've used the name Peter, and I've spelt Peter's name wrong. It's missing an E. There are ways to fix this. Now, there are multiple ways to fix this. You can click on the cell, and you can go up into the formula bar here, and you can just add the E where you've missed it and hit enter. Or, I can try this again, or you go back into the cell here. And if you just double click on the cell, your cursor will actually then allow you to type directly in the cell here as opposed to using the formula bar. You fix the name, and again, you want to make sure you hit enter. So if you make mistakes, because we all make mistakes and we're human, that is a really, really quick way in text or in numbers to go back into a cell, either double clicking the cell or clicking the cell and then choosing to work through it in the formula bar here. So again, very easy. If you make mistakes, that is a really quick way of fixing that spelling. So some other little tips and tricks for cell movement using your keyboard as opposed to using your mouse. It is more efficient to use your keyboard when working through Excel a lot of times. But again, there are a lot of tricks here. So to move across cells up and down, if you hold the shift button and you hit enter, it allows you to move up in a column. Whereas just hitting the button enter allows you to move down in the column. The same thing works for the tab function. So the tab function on your keyboard tabs and allows you to move through the columns to the right. In order to move back through the columns using your keyboard to the left, you hold the shift button and you use tab. So again, it allows you just using your keyboard as opposed to your mouse, really simple way by using the shift function, either shift and tab or just tab to move right and left, and enter or shift and enter to move up and to move down. So quickly for that, we're going to be moving into column C. And column C, we are looking at some wage rates. So let's pick a random wage rate for employee number 1, Lauren. We're going to pick $25. Okay. And then in column D, we're going to say that Lauren in the month of October worked 175 hours. And then we're going to hit enter. So we have our employee ID, we have our person, her wage rate $25. And in 1 month or last month, she worked 175 total hours for the duration of the month. We're just using random numbers here. So we want to copy this wage rate. So really quickly, there are several ways that you can copy information in cells in Excel. There are 3 actually. The first one, if you use the Control-C button, it will actually highlight the cell with a little dotted line, as you can see there. That is, you've copied the information contained in cell C1. And then you can move, let's just say we're going to move and we're going to paste that information using Control-V into cell C2. So that is one way to do it. Another way to do it was like we had done before using the autofill series. Now, in a case of this, we're using a payroll table. Most employees don't have the exact same wage rate in a company, but for simplicity, we could drag an autofill here so that it gives the same wage rate for each employee. Okay. If for some reason we don't want, and in this case, we don't want all of these numbers to be the same, we could clear the contents. So in order to do that, you can right click and use here, clear contents. Another way to do that is actually under the home tab in the ribbon, all the way down to the editing group. Oh, sorry. There is a clear button. It's kind of like looks like a little purple and white eraser. If you click on that, you have the option to actually do lots of things. You can clear all. You clear all of the information, the formatting, everything selected in that cell. You could just clear the formatting. So in this case, it's formatted it to autofill for 25. You could do that. You could just clear the contents in the cell and keep the formatting. So in this case, we are just going to hit clear contents, and that's going to go away. However, if we look at this table is not very clear. First of all, it's not complete, but second of all, it's not very clear if you were to just have to review this table, what we're working on. There is no headings. There's no clear description of each column or row. So in order to do that, we need to insert a row here. So how do we do that? So if you highlight over the number 1, it will highlight the entirety of the top column. And in order to insert a blank row above the current row 1 that we're using, we need to after we've highlighted, we need to right click and we need to insert. So about halfway down on that toggle menu, insert, and it will insert a blank row. You can do the same thing for columns. So you could, again, highlight the entirety of column A and you could insert. But for today, we only want to insert on one top row. So if we want to undo an insert cell, if we go to the very, very top, there's a really quick access toolbar. There is an undo arrow. If you click that undo arrow, it will remove the information that you've done. This is a really easy function here. And there's actually, I will show you shortly, an ability to add functions to this top toolbar so that you have all kinds of features up here and you don't have to go digging for them in the ribbons. So in the blank row that we've added, we want to add some descriptions. So in column A, we said we've used employee IDs. So we want to type in employee ID. And then we hit the tab button to move to column B. And column B, we want to put employee, let's say employee name. And again, tabbing over to column C, this is hourly wage. And tabbing to column D gives us hours worked. Okay. We are going to, while we're here adding descriptions to column E and to column F, we are actually going to add 2 more because there are 2 more features we are going to be using here. We are also going to be putting in gross income and hitting tab. And we are also going to be putting taxes. Now, I know in First Nation communities, a lot of the times taxes aren't applicable, but this is simply for a formula and a calculation function here. And then we are also going to add in column G a tax rate. And in cell H1, tabbing over, we are going to put 0.12. And we're going to hit enter. So I will give you really quickly about 20 seconds just to make sure that you've got all of that information before we continue to move. Okay, so as you can see here, We've added descriptions to each of these headers. However, each of these headers, you cannot see all of the information contained in each of the headers in each of these columns. So what is an easy way to adjust for these to fit? Now there's several. One, you could highlight the column and you could just simply toggle over and change the width. The second feature, if you highlight over column B, you can right click and you can go down to column width and you can click on that and you can change the numbers here. So let's just say we're going to change it to be 11 and hit OK. Now, in this case, it didn't actually make it big enough. So we would have to then right click, go back to column width and guess for the width of the column again. Not really a great way of doing it. There is another way to do it where it will auto adjust for you. If you highlight over the column and then you stick your mouse on the far side, in this case of the column, and you double click, it will automatically change the column width for you. You can also do it for a range. So if you click on column D all the way across to column H, and again, you toggle so that it's making an arrow on either side and you double click, it will adjust all of the column widths to be exact for the information contained in there. And it will continue to adjust those column widths as you put information within your Excel table. So that's a really easy feature. Again, you can do it on a one column, one row basis, or you can do it for a range of columns or rows. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we want to find and replace information. So we're going to go back to the hourly wage column, and I want you to autofill this entire section here. So like we did earlier, we toggled and we dragged down. However, let's say Maddie's wage is $30. She's the only one that's different here, just for this purpose here. So we want to adjust the information in some of these wages. Let's say we've had a cost of living increase across the payroll table, and we want to, all of the employees in $25, we want to adjust and add 50 cents to their wage rate. An easy way to do this, doing a range of employees, is we're going to go to the top ribbon. So you click the home ribbon. You're going to go all the way across the ribbon to the editing group. And in the editing group, you want to click find and select. So if you click on that, it will toggle down and give you a whole bunch of options. In this case, we're using replace. So what does it want us to do? We want to find the 25, anything that has 25, and we want to replace that value with, let's say, $25.50. Everybody's getting a 50 cent. We want to replace all. So if you click replace all, it's done. And it's told you how many replacements it's made. You want to hit OK and you want to close. So really easy feature there. It allows you to change multiple cells all at one time, as opposed to going back and inputting them manually each one. So again, really quick little tool saver. So the next step here, I want to randomly fill in the remaining information on hours worked for the rest of these employees. So let's just, as I said, just pick some random numbers. And we'll say 95. Okay, so again, doesn't matter what the values are, they're all random numbers. We're going to move to very simple formulas. So again, very simple formulas. We're going to use this like a calculator, and we're using multiplication formulas in this exercise. So in order to do that, all formulas start with an equal sign. So in cell E2, which is the first employee here, cell E2, you always want to start with an equals sign. So you can either work right in this information in the cell, or you can work in the formula bar. but I want you to start with an equals. And you can manually do the calculation. So you can do 25.50, which is Lauren's hourly wage rate, multiply, which is the star function in your calculator or across your keyboard, depending on how your keyboard is laid out. And in this case, her hours worked is 175. Okay. If that looks correct, you hit enter and it will calculate that out for you. However, what happens if we've made a change to Lauren's wage rate? Let's say it's changed and she got another 50-cent raise and it's gone up to 26. Because we've manually typed the calculation here, it actually does not adjust itself across because this still says 25.5, but we've changed it to be 26. So the second and actually most accurate method to do calculations within cells would be to use the cell values. So to do that, we want to, again, always start with an equal sign. We would then click on the cell, the first cell that we want to use. So in this case, this is cell C3, Caitlin's wage rate of 25.5. Again, using the multiplication, and then clicking on the cell D3 for the hours worked. Then we want to hit enter. So it does the exact same calculation as it did above. However, it's using the information in cell C3 and the information in cell D3 as opposed to manually inputting the actual formula. So this is a more accurate way of using calculations within Excel, because when the information changes, and we know that information changes frequently, this will actually calculate the change with the information as opposed to the manual. So we are going to autofill for this purpose, again, using the little toggle, dragging all the way down. It should autofill for you. And when I say autofill, Excel is really, really good at trying to figure out what you're doing. So it's going to want to fill the sequence based on what it thinks the sequence should look like. And in this case, it's done it right. So if you move down, cell E4 is saying that it's calculating cell C4 and cell D4. Again, cell E5, same thing, C5 and D5. So it's actually filled in the sequence for you correctly. You want to make sure that when you do use the autofill format, that it is filling the sequence in correctly. It usually will, Excel is very good at trying to figure out what you're trying to do as you're working through it and filling it in accordingly. So the next thing we're going to do, we are going to calculate the taxes. So in this case, we are going to be using column F, and we are using the taxes based on the tax rate that we've indicated here, the 0.12 in cell H1. So in order to do that, to do Lauren's taxes, we're saying that her gross income is subject to a 12% tax rate. So in order to do that, like we've done, we always start with an equal sign. We are going to click on cell E2, which is the calculation of C2 and D2 if we fixed it, which we should go back and make sure we fixed it. And we want to multiply it by the tax rate, which is in cell H1. If you click on cell H1, you hit enter. Okay, let's make sure we did not fix this cell. So we need to go back and make sure that we fixed it to reflect the calculation of C2 and D2 and enter, and it will automatically adjust through there. So if we want to autofill in the tax column, let's drag over on cell F2 and drag down all the way to the amount of people. So why did we get a 0? Well, Excel is thinking that this cell here wants to be cell E3 and H2. Well, H2 doesn't have a value in it. So it's automatically wanting to think that it's using the same sequence, being the cell 1 to the left and 2 to the right and 1 up. Same thing here, 1 to the left, 2 to the right and 1 up. It's not what we want it to do. When we want to use an absolute cell value to do a calculation, we have to add something to the cell. We have to add what I call dollar values. So because we want to continuously go back and use the tax rate cell and not the sequence of cells that Excel thinks we're trying to pick up. So in order to fix that, we're going to go back to cell F number 2. And we're going to actually click in the formula bar because we're going to make a change in the formula bar. Okay. So in the change in the formula bar, we want to add a dollar sign in front of the H. And we want to add a dollar sign in front of the 1. If we do that and hit enter, we're still getting the same calculation here. It was still 546. But now if we autofill, and again, drag all the way down to employee number 10, it's autofilling the correct amount. So it's actually taking the number in cell E3 and multiplying it again by the tax rate cell. So it's choosing the same locked in cell every single time when using your sequence. So again, that's just a little quick formula tip. And if you want to learn more about these sort of things, join us in 2 weeks, because today we're just doing very, very simple items. So I hope everybody so far is okay. We're going to do one more section here, and we're going to format some cells. So again, we want to format because we are looking at dollar values. We're looking at numerical values. Again, we're looking at dollar values. So, but when you look at this table, you don't really see the differentiation between what would be a numerical value in a monetary and just numbers specifically. So how do we format? The best way to do that is we're going to start by clicking on column C. That's the first column that needs proper formatting. So by clicking on column C, we want to format these cells with money. So if we go to the home and we go over to the number group here, and it's close to the middle, and click on the down arrow, it will allow us a little pop-up option to actually format cells. So in a case of this, let's choose currency, okay? And it gives us a sample of an hourly wage, which is exactly what we're working with. The option to have decimal places, which we do, and the symbol. You can choose to have the symbol, you can choose to take away the symbol, and you can be using the symbol in multiple different currencies across the world. In this case, we are just going to simply use a monetary one, and you click OK. So that will automatically change the format for the entire column. The same thing can be done for column D. Again, we want under the home in the number. This doesn't necessarily need to be a currency because it's not. Hours worked is not a currency, but it's a number. And do we want decimal places? You can choose to have as many decimal places or none. You can also choose to use the number separator or not. In this case, that's what we've chosen. But again, it's all how you want to format what that cell looks like. Same with E and F. We want to format it because those are also dollar amounts. And hit OK. Now, when we look at this column F has not adjusted nicely. So if we toggle over and we double click, it will adjust nicely for you there.
Lauren, sorry to interrupt. I just had a question here and I just wanted to bring it up. I had someone ask if you can go back to F2 and show them the formula that you had written in with the dollar sign.
Absolutely. So here in the formula bar up here on that first one, so in F2, the formula ends up being equals cell E2, and then you want to multiply it by what would be this cell here if you clicked on H1, but you want to add dollar values before the H and before the number 1. So that allows it to always, when you autofill the sequence of numbers in that column, it will always go back and use that locked in cell as opposed to trying to think it wants to move down, filling in the sequence. So I hope that that is, again, dollar values for the column letter and before the row number.
Thank you.
So the next thing we want to do, we want to format this top row. And, you know, we can format it to make it look whatever we want. We could make it look bold. We could underline the letters. So again, under your home tab, in your font group, there's all kinds of options here when you click the down arrow. You could, let's say, we're going to bold it. And let's just bold it. Because then that distinguishes the header from the information in the small spreadsheet. The other thing that you could do is you could potentially fill in the background here so that, again, this column sticks out. And in order to do that, again, you're in your font group under your home ribbon. And if we, oh, no, that's not what I want. Oh, yes, it is. If I go over to the fill option, let's fill it with an orange. You can choose whatever color you want. Again, so that it sticks out here. Now, a little trick here. I'm going to show you the Format Painter. I really like this Format Painter because it allows you to, if you wanted to format multiple cells without having to, you know, click on the cell and make it bold and fill in the background and do all of those things, clicking, you can actually format it using what's called the Format Painter. So the Format Painter can be found in the home ribbon, down under the clipboard. So the very first here, you can see it says Format Painter. Okay, if you click on it, if you click on a cell, let's say cell A1, and we hit Format Painter. Okay, see when I've clicked on that, it's now highlighted cell A1, and I want cell A1 to make B6 look like A1. So if I do that and I click on that cell, it automatically fills the same formatting to that cell, B6. Now, if I wanted to do it to multiple cells, because maybe you want to do it, you know, across, you want to highlight multiple cells. If you go again back to the same thing under the clipboard in the Format Painter and you double click Format Painter, okay, you can do it to multiple people. So we can do it to Chantal. We can do it to this number here. We can do it here, okay? And when you're done, oops, sorry. We're done. You just double click on a cell and go away. But it's formatted all of these cells the way that A1 cell has been. So you can make them look all the same. Now, if you don't want to do that, again, using this little fancy up top, you just undo because we really don't want it to look like that when we continue to move forward. But that's a quick little format. One other super quick, which I really like, and it's super easy tool to use, because I think we're getting close to time here, is the auto formatting toolbar. So in order to, an auto formatting is a simple click, but in order to format your toolbar, you can actually customize it based on what you want to do. So if you go to the top by the autosave and the undo and the redo, and you click this little down arrow, it drops down to all kinds of options that you can add, customize to your toolbar. Or you could add more commands. In this case, I need to actually customize it to the toolbar. So, sorry, hang on a second here. It doesn't want me to do more commands today. There we go. So again, you drop down and you click on more commands. Let's say we want to use auto format. Now there are hundreds of commands here. Depends on what you want to do. In a case of this, we're just going to use auto format. So we need to find auto format here. Or let's just use Format Painter, and we want to add here. If you hit OK, let's just pick a bunch and add them so that you can see what it looks like, and hit OK here. All of these things will then find themselves in your customized toolbar at the top. So if you are using certain formula cells, if you're finding that you're always formatting your cells a certain way, and you don't want to have to go into the ribbons and the groups and find these fonts and use these things, you can actually add them to the top of your toolbar, make it easy so that if you want to format this cell a certain way, you just click and it's right there. You don't have to go finding for it. So that's just a quick, it's a simple feature. It's a user-friendly feature as opposed to a formula feature or an Excel feature, but is a very, very good feature. The last thing we want to look at really quickly is printing and formatting when we print. So to do that, you want to go to your File tab, the top, and down to Print, okay? Now, I only have Adobe on my computer. I don't have a printer attached to this computer. But if you go to it, show you a print preview. In this case, because we don't have a ton of information, it's actually showing you all of the information that you want to print, let's say. But maybe it's not in the orientation that you want. You want to change the orientation. So there's all kinds of settings and functions here to see. We could change the orientation to be landscape, and maybe that's better what you want. There's also a way to look at it. We looked at this earlier. If you go down to the zoom function, there are different viewing features that you can see of your chart here in Excel. So if you go here, you can see on a bigger note what this would look like. And this would allow you to add your header, should you need a header to your page. Let's say you're creating a report for chief and council or for your manager, and this is what you need, and you want to add a header here. You can just simply type in payroll table. And then when you print, that heading is there as well. And it's in the middle of your table. So again, very simple things, but just in the print features, you may have to change your margins, make your margins narrow if your chart is too big. Case today, and with time, we have a simple table, but you may have a graph. You may have, a pie chart here. You may have 10 pages of items that you need to print that maybe you need to adjust the formatting so that it all fits on one page so that it's nicer to look at. Those are all things that you want to know that are available to you in the print feature. And again, like I said, I don't have a printer, so it's just going to try to save, in my case, to Adobe.